What's up? Live a life giving life. Live a life giving life. What's up, Beth?
Nothing. We missed y'all last week.
We did miss y'all last week. We took our kids snow tubing. It was 70 degrees, got sunburned. We went up to Sugar Mountain. It was off the chain.
It's fine.
But we're back. Live a life giving life. Hope you're watching this, enjoying this. Hope this series has been real good for you. I will give you a couple of quick announcements. Beth and I are working on our first book ever. We're writing a book on marriage and relationship. We actually started working on it. So that'll be out sometime in the next 10 years. Can't wait.
When the kids are grown.
And there's another announcement. Big, huge announcement. Apple released the Apple Watch. You can buy it now. It's online. You can order it. It won't be here till like
It'll
April.
only cost you $10,000.
17.
$17,000.
Yeah, there's a $17,000 version of the Apple Watch. 4 or 5 versions of $12,000, $10,000 watches. They go all the way down to some other people's price points. I think the cheapest is $349. Yep, I'm saving up for mine now. But $17,000. That's pretty. That's a lot of money. Tonight or today, this morning, afternoon, whatever time. Excuse me, that you're watching this. I don't know if you've noticed or not, but I've worn the same hoodie that on every broadcast. I do that on purpose. I want to wear the same blue hoodie. Sometimes I have the red shirt on under it. Sometimes I have a different shirt. But I do it on purpose. If you just caught on to that or haven't caught on to it, I wear it. I wear it every Wednesday, and there's purpose behind that. We'll talk about that later, maybe in the time management, live a life-giving life, and we'll talk about managing our time, right? But tonight's session is the most popular session in the world.
You think?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. None of us want to hear what we're going to talk about tonight, but tonight's session, it's the most popular because it's centered around the most popular topic in the word. That's right, a $17,000 watch. And you know, some of us would call somebody materialistic if they bought a $17,000 Apple Watch, right? We would. But the truth is this, that we only call people materialistic
When they buy stuff that we wouldn't buy.
when they buy things that we can't buy. If I could afford a $17,000 watch, you go ahead and judge me now. I would buy it. Probably not that watch. There's another watch I like a lot, but if I could afford that, I'd also be giving lots of money to the work of Jesus and although
And a new kitchen.
a new kitchen. I kind of like that brown counter, that brown. I mean, how many kitchens can you get that got like miss? You know what I'm saying? This is 2-tone countertops here, baby. So let me just ask a question. If you're watching this right now, who and you had $10,000 that you had budgeted, some of you are like, I got $10,000. I understand that, but $10,000 that you had budgeted to give away, or let me say it this way: I gave you $10,000 and said there's only one rule: you have to give it all away. What would you give it to? Who would you give it to, and why? You know, maybe if you're watching this later, you would pause this right now and kind of answer that question alone. But to live a life-giving life, especially in the area of relationship, I think there's something that goes a long ways when we talk about the term generosity.
Mm-hmm.
So who would you give $10,000 to? You'd buy me the watch.
I wouldn't buy it. No, it's supposed to be to give away.
You could give it to me.
No, I wouldn't give it to you.
Okay.
I would give some to, there's a couple in our church that has blessed a lot of people.
Yeah.
And I would give some of it to them.
Uh-huh.
And
like a surprise, like a secret.
Yeah. You know what? I would send them on a vacation. Like just
that'd be cool.
Here you go. Go on a vacation. So like the Disney World, they would take them and their kids. And then there's also a gentleman that's been coming to our church that we met at Urban Ministries. Actually, we met at Put Feet on It down on Holloway Street. And he's been coming, and I I'd probably give some to him.
Time out. For those that don't know that weren't here several weeks ago, it was actually
At Christmas.
at
the
Christmas
14th.
time. We did a Put Feet on It message where we actually put feet on the gospel message. We went downtown Durham to a less, I don't know the word. It's not a project community, but it's a community where less
It's
than
pretty rough,
poverty.
yeah.
It's a rough area
Mhm.
of town. It's known for sub-poverty living lifestyles. And we met a really good friend down there, a really good guy who's become a really good friend, I guess. And he comes to our church every Sunday since then and brings the most joy and smile and just an awesome guy to be around. And Beth was saying that she would give him a
Yeah, I
portion
think
of
I
that
would
money.
give him maybe a hand up, like, let's get you a place to live.
Yeah.
And some clothes and,
Yeah.
you know, that kind of thing. And then I would give a portion of it to the church,
What kind of portion? Like how much of that?
probably half of it.
Oh, so 50%. Oh,
Yeah,
so
and then
you
I
would.
do 50-50.
Okay. So you'd give 25% to your friends that are generous and 25% to your new friend and half to the church. Whoa. She's getting holier than thou
No, I
now.
would get half to the church because we have a lot of mission to
That's right.
fulfill. So yeah. What about you?
I would give, if I had $10,000 to give away, like I think I would do it all in one shot. Like I really think I would do the Dave Ramsey thing. I think I would drive to a restaurant, to the worst shift like imaginable, and I think I would just pray, God, let the waiter, waitress be the one. I think I'd order a meal. I'd get to know them. I wouldn't tell them anything about me, and I think I'd just drop them the $10,000. If I had $10,000 to give away, I think I'd do that. I've always gotten a kick out of that. Would do that. You know, a little conviction right here, just kind of in the live moment. We used to do that a lot. We used to not $10,000, but
100.
we used to give somebody $100 tip from time to time, and just bless somebody above and beyond. And that's always a ton of fun.
No, we've done it recently.
Yeah, we have. Absolutely. We sure have. But it's always fun. So here's the next thing I'd like you to think about. I challenge you, if you're watching this video, if you want to live a life-giving life, generosity is going to have to be a part of your life. There's no doubt about that. But I would challenge you, even though you can't correspond with us right now, but sometime today or tomorrow, would you tell somebody about a time somebody was generous to you? Like, I'm going to let Beth do now. What's the time that somebody was really generous to you?
You know, we lived in our house for like the first 3 years. Actually, it took us 2 years to buy the house, but we lived here for the first 3 years through winter with no heat. Like, we had some baseboard heat in part of the house, but in other parts, we just didn't really run the baseboard heat. We had infrared heaters that worked pretty good, but you know, Jeff and I had talked about getting heat. We had people come out here and give us estimates on getting heat, but in order for us to put heat in the house, we were going to have to go into debt to do that. And you know, we really didn't talk about it very much with like outside of our home, but like each winter that came up, you know, I'd be like, oh Lord, please let us have a mild winter so that, you know, our heating bill went through the roof. But this past winter, or before it became winter, I guess it's like right after Christmas, someone in our church, actually their family put heat in our house.
Yeah.
So that was a big deal.
That was a huge deal. Mine's not as big of a monetary value, but this one just recently happened to me. We do Starting Point at our church, and we were at Starting Point one night, and a Starting Point is the way you connect with our church, and we do it once a month. And there was a guy there, and I was talking with him, and we were having a really cool conversation. And I looked at his jacket. He was wearing a coat, and I was like, I really like that coat, man. That's a nice jacket. And what kind of jacket is it? And I was thinking I was going to buy it because I love jackets. I love coats. And so he told me the name of it. And then like a couple of weeks later, it was a Sunday morning. I was down front worshiping, and I was actually standing beside Beth. We were actually arguing about something. And somebody tapped me on my shoulder, and it was the guy, and he had folded up the jacket and he handed it to me. And that just meant a lot to me. The fact that he paid attention, that I said I liked it, and that he thought, well, shoot, if you like it, I want you to have it. And that's generosity.
Mhm.
Generosity is doing for other people with no strings, unconditional, right?
And you know, when we lived in Turkey, just a side note, I mean, they weren't even like, they didn't even believe in like the same thing that we believed in. You know, most of them, 99% of Turkish people are Muslims, but Jeff worked with several Turkish people, and like their culture was, you don't tell a Turkish person that you like something, because if you do, they're going to give it to you. Like it's
That's
their
right.
culture to give it to you.
Mhm.
And it took us a little while to figure this out, but we were at a girl's house, or a couple's house. Jeff worked with the husband, and she didn't speak any English, but she had a platter, and I said, I really like that platter, you know, not thinking that she was going to take all the stuff out of it. And they like insisted. Do you remember that? They insisted that we take the platter.
Yeah.
Oh,
She took everything off of it, wiped it down, and handed it to us, and like said that they would be offended and angry.
Yeah.
I remember them saying
Yeah.
she'd be angry. Yeah. So let me start off or kind of continue on about generosity. Let me talk about tithing for just a moment. This is not a message or a small group about tithing. This is a group about life-giving relationships. And if you want to be life-giving, I want you to know something, that Jesus has to be Lord, okay, of your life. He has to be Lord. And tithing is something that you are called to do. It's not just an Old Testament law. It was actually around a long time before the Old Testament law was written. Jesus mentions it. It's in Hebrew. It's all throughout scriptures about us tithing. Jesus even says in one of the scriptures, yes, you should tithe, but don't forget the other things. Don't just buy your way into heaven. So I want to say this about tithing, and then we're going to move on and talk more about generosity. Tithing is trusting God with the 10% of everything that you earn, your income, your fruit, your whatever you produce. You know, that's what it's called. It's tithing. It's 10%, and thank God that it's 10%, not 9 or 11, because that'd be really hard to work it out. And just if you don't understand that, if you get 100, if you get $10, one of them goes to God through the local church. That's what tithing is. And I want to say this about tithing, and then I'm done, unless you want to add anything. But if you're going to be life-giving relationships and life-giving people, if you're going to be that group, then you need to be tithing, because it sets your heart right. It starts your heart out right. But I want you to know something, that tithing is tough when you don't have a lot of money, and it's also tough when you do have a lot of money. It doesn't get easier. Your faith gets stronger, but it's not like it's going to get easier. So I know if you live by this trap of, well, once I get a lot of money, it's going to be just as hard, because it's more money.
Harder,
yeah. So it's hard when you don't have any, and it's hard when you do.
Yeah. I'll just add one quick thing. I have a really close friend, and we were actually in a conversation this week about tithing, and she said something to me that I never had really thought about, and she was telling me like why tithing is hard. And she was saying, you know, as long as I have a bank account, you know, with money in it, I don't have to trust God financially. I don't have to trust God because, you know, if we fail, or if we get laid off, we lose our job, we have that bank account of money. And that kind of stuck out to me that you know, they are people that have that mindset.
Yeah,
there's something about trusting God to provide for you.
Yeah, in like a systematic manner. And the reason I love tithing is because it's percentage giving, and I love percentage giving, because when you percentage give, you're saying, I'm giving you 10% no matter what. Mm-hmm. See, when you just tip God, or you just give a little bit to God, what you're really doing, and it's subconscious sometimes it's very conscious, you're giving God whatever's left.
Or what you feel like you can.
Or what you feel like right, which is different than percentage giving.
It's not tithing.
Right, it's not the same thing. Like, this is a horrible statement. I hate to hear it. It makes me cringe sometimes, is when somebody says, I'm getting better at tithing, or I tithed more this month than I did last month. You can't. You can't. It's like 100%. You can only score 100 on a test. You ever heard somebody say, I'm 110% positive? You can't be. There's only one full pie makes 100%. A tithe is only 10%. Okay? It's only 10%.
That's what we call it, tithes and offering. Because anything over that. So we give about, last year, I guess, 17% of what we brought in we gave
to the local church,
in our church alone.
not counting mission trips.
Right. No, that's
Yeah.
just in our
Okay.
church, based off of what we made at the end of the year, everything that came in off of in the end of the year, and what our giving statement was.
Right.
When we got our giving statement just from Revolve Church, we gave 17%. So 10% of that was our tithes, and the 7% of that was just an offering.
That's right.
So
Tithing doesn't make you like special; it makes you obedient. Like
right.
it's above that where you really get into it. But that's enough about tithing. You didn't log in tonight or this morning to watch tithing. You learn to be a life-giving, to live a life-giving life. And I'm just telling you, tonight we are talking about generosity. Generosity is one of the I want to use a big word here, but I don't know a big word here. It's a central part of life giving. It is. Listen, no life has ever been given without there being generosity involved.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't give when we gave life to our children. There was something given from Beth and from myself in order to give that life the opportunity. When Jesus gave us life, his life was given generously. It's a generous gift. So generosity is paramount. That's the word. If you want to be life-giving,
Mm-hmm.
you have to be generous. There's just no doubt about it. If you're going to live a life-giving life, you're going to be generous. And I'll tell you something about being generous that helps. Is now that Beth and I live, we haven't always lived generously.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't always been generous to people. But now that we are, it makes it really easy for us to receive generosity. Like 6-7 years ago, I wouldn't have let anybody pay for a heating unit in my house. My pride was too big. My ego was too strong, right? So let me say this about generosity. There's one thing in your life. Let me say it this way. You will never, ever regret being generous.
No.
Never. You will never do it. And I want you to know that generosity is a lot bigger than money. It's a lot more than just a few dollars. So let me talk about some keys to having an attitude of generosity. I think one of the most important things is, and we talk a lot about this at our church, is it's who you hang out with. I was talking with some guys today at lunch, and I think it came out this way: show me your friends, and I'll show you your future. Mm-hmm. If you're not around generous people, you're not going to be generous. Mm-hmm. You're not.
And we practice that as a church. Like I feel like we have a good church that our church is good friends with, and we're good friends with the pastor and his wife. But it's actually C3 Church, and it's really anything that we need. When we're there, it's like they are very generous to us. There's always food set up for us. A couple that was with us, we were there this past weekend for a conference, and a couple that was with us, the Rileys, Hannah wasn't feeling well, and she wanted a Diet Coke, and they don't have any Coke products or anything in their facility.
Yeah.
And they went out and got her a Diet Coke. So they're a very generous church. So I think that goes.
Well, we surround ourselves with generous churches. Pastor Dean Herman pastors a church down in South Carolina. He's not only my pastor, he's a very good friend of mine and a mentor and a leader and an overseer at our church. And
Earl Eccles.
Earl Eccles has been here. But Dean down in South Carolina, his church was funding our church with a monthly amount before we ever started to help us kind of get going. And I called him and just told him that we needed more money. And man, they sent us like $2,000 on the spot, and I think they doubled or more than doubled, but it was a lot. Yeah, they started sending more money monthly, and that's just being around generous people. The two other things that you got to have, and you need to maintain these things. You need to maintain some generous relationships, and there's nothing wrong with bringing people into your circle that aren't generous and being generous around them so they can see it and catch on to it. That's kind of fun. I love it when I'm with somebody and I'm like, let's leave a huge tip tonight. And they're like, what? And I'm like, yeah, that's what Jesus would do. And let's just do it. Even if service sucked, right? It was horrible.
That's when it's hard. That's when it's hard.
That's when it's the funnest, though.
Like when service is
tough. That's when it's the most fun, I think, when the service is terrible. Another thing is this. You have to have open ears to needs. If you're going to be generous, you have to have an open mind and open ears, open heart. And open ears is kind of a figure of speech, but an openness to what is really going on around you. Because if you don't, you'll just be, let me say, ineffectively generous. And there's no such thing really, but you could be more effectively generous if you pay attention to needs.
Yeah, and listen to the Holy Spirit.
Yeah, and
several years ago when we first moved here, we really didn't have much money. We were kind of pinching pennies, honestly. But I went into Food Line, and I remember, you might remember this, but there was an older lady in front of me checking out, and I know she didn't have much money because she was kind of scraping her, getting all of her coins together, and I felt the Holy Spirit say, "Pay for her food."
Yeah,
and I didn't do it. I was in a hurry, and
No.
I just wanted her to get out
I
of
said,
the way.
yeah, no.
And I didn't do it, and I felt so bad about it.
Yeah.
I mean, still, that's been 3 or more years. It's before we started the church, and I just felt like, still to this day, I'm kind of convicted of it. So I try not to let those moments, slip by. But
and the other thing is budget generosity. Just like you write a budget and you budget your power bill and your car payment and your insurance and all the things that you think you own, but you don't. You just work to pay for them. Anyway, another day, another story. But budget generosity. I mean, write in the budget 2%, 1%, and say, we're going to give this away. And do it with your family. Do it with your friends and say, we're going to be generous. You want to talk about being life-giving. You want to live a life-giving life. Imagine at the end of the month, if you say, I've budgeted 1% and you make $2,000 for the month. I mean, you're going to give, how much is that? That $20? Is that what it is? We're going to give $20 away. Can you imagine the smile on the face when you give the panhandler $20?
mm-hmm.
Or when you do something for somebody, you buy that person in line something? And if you come to our church, you get a little card that says something extra to show you God loves you. We do these, call them random acts of kindness. And I think that's pretty awesome. So if you want to maintain an attitude of generosity, you want to keep it, you need to ask the Holy Spirit to keep your mind open, your ears open, your eyes open, your heart open. You need to be around friends that are generous, and you need to budget for some of it. Those are just 3 simple things that'll help you plan to be generous. I can tell you that being generous is not easy.
Yeah, there is a sacrifice.
It is. It's painful sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Like it hurts a little bit. And there's something that I want to talk about just before we close in a moment. But I want to tell you about a time. We've talked a little bit about times that people have been really generous to us. But I'll tell you a time that Beth and I kind of decided that it was time for the rubber to meet the road. We had prayed about, we had talked about, we had decided certainly that we had heard from God that it was time to plant a church, and we were going to do this in Durham, North Carolina. We knew our city was going to be Durham, and we're going to be moving from Montgomery, Alabama, and moving to Durham. And at the time, Beth was running a small business that we kind of owned, and
we owned it.
I guess we did own it, but we owned it outright. There was no debt in it. It was just all profit. Every bit of it was profit. She was also working for the Department of Defense. I was selling cars part-time on the side, and I was working active duty Air Force.
And we were both part-time with the church.
And we were part-time at a church. So both of us had 3 jobs.
Mm-hmm.
And we were making a lot of money. We weren't seeing each other quite a bit, quite as much as we'd like to, but we were making a lot of money because we had a plan. And
you were saying no to a lot of things.
We did. We said no to a lot of dinners and lunches and restaurants, and said no to new cars when we really wanted them. Said no to a lot of things. And we side note, has rent been paid?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry, I'm a little ADD. We have a house in Alabama that we still own, but we rent it out. And so we were able to save a lot of money. And we actually invested. The Association of Related Churches, the ARC, is an organization that helps churches plant churches. And they help them with practical tools, with innovative ideas, and they also help them with relationships of other people that have gone before us and done it. And then they help you with the money side of things, and they match money. And at the time we planted, they would match $30,000. So if you could raise $30,000, they would match $30,000. And here's what I want you to know is that Beth and I made a decision that we would give the first $30,000, and we gave everything that we had. We drained the bank. You hear me? I mean, drained it. And I want you to know something, that it was very, very difficult to do it, but it's been the most rewarding amount of money. It's the most money I've ever spent on one thing, I think, other than buying a car and paying payments. But in one lump sum, it's the most I'd ever saved at once. But
yeah, we had put more down on a house one time, a little bit more than that down on a house.
But that was it, yeah.
That's been it. Other than a house,
we drained the bank, though. We
yeah.
literally drained the bank, and we both feel like it was obedience to God. And some people ask, this church that we're planting and we're running right now, leading, is very successful. 79 people have been baptized in 2.5 years. We see an average of 240, 250 people. I think we had 280 last week. And we're having great numbers of people come to church. Lots of small groups, lots of life change. 67% almost of our church are people that were never in church before our church, or every now and then. That means Christmas and Easter, Mother's Day, birthday, something like that. But 60-something% of our church was from unchurched people. And I believe it's because of the obedience of being generous. I was just in an audition tonight with a band member who's interested in being a part of our worship team. And I asked him, the final question I had for him was, why Revolve Church? There's a lot of great churches in our city, lots of amazing churches here. Why Revolve? And he said that I just knew he was going to say that the preaching was off the chain, but he didn't. He did say he liked it, and that's good. Your preacher does need to be able to communicate, but he said, I thought he would say maybe the worship, because he was applying to be on the worship team or auditioning. He didn't. He said it was the greeters at the front door, and their generosity, that's the word he used, was their generosity. Like, they give of themselves. So I want you to know something. Generosity is not always about money. It starts with money, but it goes so much deeper than that. If you're generous with your finances, you'll be generous with your time, with your life. You will have a life-giving, you will live a life-giving life, because it starts with money.
Yeah. And I was going to say, back to the $30,000, I think we had always, like our whole married life before Revolve Church, we carried a good balance in our savings account.
Yeah.
Like, we carried, it was very important to us that we had money.
Yeah.
And like at this time in our life, this is probably, we have less in our savings than ever before.
Mm-hmm.
We have a safety net, but we carry less in our savings on like a monthly basis or whatever. But our finances were more comfortable in them than we've ever been.
Yeah, absolutely. And I long for the day that we. So let me just throw a disclaimer: we don't have $30,000. Okay.
Not nowhere near.
And I want to say this: we invested it in something. And I'm preaching about this Sunday at Revolve Church. We invested it in something that makes an eternal difference. Like, I realize there's a lot of good organizations out there. There's some amazing mission trips. These parachurch organizations where they put feet on kids' shoes on kids' feet in Africa and other foreign countries. They feed homeless people. I get it. Those are awesome organizations. But there's only one organization that Jesus is coming back to get, and that's the church. So we made an investment, and we feel like that it's very important. If you're going to live a life-giving life, you got to know the person that gives life, and that's Jesus. So therefore, you got to give to the work of Jesus, which is the church. You got to start with the tithe, but then you got to go above the tithe and start giving to some people. Love God and love people. Love His church, give to His church, but love others too, and be generous in things that really, really matter and make a difference. So what would you think about this question just for a moment, and then we're going to close, and hopefully you've gotten something good from this. I'll give you some practical things you can apply to your life right before we close and dismiss. But many of you have heard the passage where Jesus talks about it's actually in Matthew, and He talks about not storing up treasures on earth where moths rust and destroy and thieves break in and steal them. And then He says something, but store for yourselves treasures in heaven. I don't know if you've ever thought about that verse. I'm going to unpack that just a little bit on Sunday at church. How I don't understand it completely, but our financial giving affects eternity. Like it's a very profound thought. It's a very deep thought, but it's a very scriptural and true thought. What do you think it means to store treasures in heaven? Is that something you feel comfortable answering?
Mm-mm.
It's a very strong question, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And you talk. I know that, like, for me, I think storing treasures in heaven would be like leaving a legacy for my children and my children's children, so that they will be in heaven. Because for me, when I think about treasures in heaven, I think about my children, my grandchildren, my great-grandchildren. Okay. That's what I think about when I think about treasures in heaven.
I don't want to give a whole lot away about Sunday's message, but that's partly right. I don't think that's all right. Again, this is an opinionated interpretation of what Jesus exactly meant here. But I think I'm right on this one. I think when he says store treasures up in heaven, it means that when you give of something that it's important to you, and that's money. All right, none of us can deny that. Every one of us this week has talked about money. Every one of us this week has thought about money. Every one of us this week has done something for money. It's just it's very important. And when you give something of that nature, that value to your life, to lead people to a life that Jesus died for and paid for, then you are therefore storing up treasures in heaven. Yes, I think it can be part of your children. You build a great church that leaves a legacy for your children to live and your grandchildren and so on, so that they can be in heaven someday. But I think we can bring heaven to earth in a sense. I don't think he was essentially and only limiting his conversation about a place after death. I think that when you give to something selflessly, generously, that you're storing up a treasure in heaven, because you're giving to something that you have no conditions. You're not going to receive anything back for it. So I'm going to unpack it a little bit on Sunday. I don't know exactly. We know this, that Jesus says this: you cannot serve both God and money. And generosity takes discipline on your part. That's the important thing that you need to hear from this, that you need to understand that generosity is going to take discipline on your part. Do you want to add something?
Yeah, I think my final thought on this is going to be that when you're not generous, you're a slave to money.
Oh, that's good.
So that's what I mean.
When you're not generous, you're a slave to money. I'm going to tweet that in just a few minutes when we get off of here. But until then, I want to give you a couple of applications. Here's the deal. If you're not tithing, start. Okay? Start now. All right? You don't have to go back and figure out how much you've missed and try to catch up. Don't do that. Just start. Just start. Take a baby step. Give 10%. Just set it up. If you're at Revolve Church, you can do it online. You can set it to recur every week, every month, every 2 weeks, however you get paid. Go to revolvechurch.com. If you are tithing, I want you to plan and budget for some generosity in your budget. Now, if you're tithing and you're generous, I want you to do me a huge favor this week. I want you to talk to somebody that you know is not. And I want you to explain to them how the benefits, how you have benefited. Benefited. That's not a word, is it? How you've benefited. Is that a word?
I don't think so.
I don't even sound right. How tithing has made a difference in your life. How being generous has made a difference in your life and helped you live a life-giving life. And I would challenge you to disagree with me. If you would say to me, Pastor Jeff, Pastor Beth, I'm tithing and I'm generous, but I still don't feel like I'm living a life-giving life, I want you to email me, jeff@revolvechurch.com, because I'd like to talk more about it, because I think there may be something off there, because I'm that much of an advocate.
Yeah, I think, when you're tithing and when you're giving and when you're generous, you don't worry about your finances. You don't worry about where the money's going to come from to pay the bills, because you know that you put trust in God that he will provide. That's right. Even if you have a $450 power bill, he will provide.
Amen. Praise the Lord for that. So next week, we're going to talk about something a little different. I mentioned it in the beginning of this. Do you remember?
Mm-mm.
You know?
Yeah, I do remember you saying.
What was
but
it?
I don't remember. Do you not remember?
I don't.
We'll come up with something. We'll let you know.
We're going to talk more about life-giving life, how to live a life-giving life next week, Wednesday night. Do me a favor, share this video, put it on your Facebook
How
page.
about honor? You want to talk about honor next week?
Honor. You want to talk about honor? I'd love to talk about honor. You want to live a life-giving life? You need to have honor in your life and practice honor, be around people that know honor, and that kind of, and even learn honor. Maybe just start learning honor. So we'll get into that next week. It's going to be a lot of fun. Pray for me and Beth as we get started writing this book and this new journey. It's going to happen sooner than later. And until then,
See you later.
you can buy me an Apple Watch and bring it to me Sunday at church, the $17,000 one. Just kidding, unless you really want to. So God bless you. See you guys later. Good night.